What's up, guys? Welcome to the Being Beautifully Honest podcast and channel. Thanks for being here, being subbed. If you're not, hit the button. If you're listening on YouTube, hit the like. It's like walking in the room and hitting that light switch. Let's brighten up the place and get into the conversation. I'm so glad Dr. Umar Johnson is speaking on this, because I was going to speak on this when I first heard what columbusshort had to say about the reason Black men date outside of their race. And this is such an old, talking point. And it's just so ridiculous, because if anything, the women who are not Black women, because honestly, the Black women who hear things like this, the real ones, we know that they're not talking about us, right? And we don't really care, because they're speaking from a place of hurt. They're speaking from a place of betrayal, possibly. They're speaking from a place of abandonment. They're speaking from a place of not really getting what they thought they deserved or what they wanted in a woman that looked like them, so they decided to go elsewhere. Or they have self-hatred issues, so when they look in the mirror, they think, I'm too dark, I'm too ugly, I gotta procreate with somebody who would cancel out my features, cancel out my skin tone, cancel out my nose size, cancel out my lips. So I'll procreate with somebody who looks nothing like me, so any offspring that I create, they'll have a better chance in life possibly than I feel like I did. It's just the truth. They won't admit that, because a lot of them, they need help and they refuse to seek therapy so that they can get to the root of their issues. No, they think they know it all. And then these niggas want to go and get microphones and cameras and start podcasts when their asses should be on somebody's sofa or couch, or even doing it virtually, getting some therapy. But no, they want to get on, get a name for themselves, create podcasts, and be out here acting like they're spitting facts and truths and trying to help people when they're a bunch of broken people, the fresh and fits of the world. You know what I mean? So when columbusshort was on this podcast, whatever it was, and he was asked about this and he shared his thoughts, it was like, really? Whatever. But Dr. Umar Johnson, he spoke about it. He was on the Breakfast Club recently. And again, like I said, he's not somebody that I agree with about everything, but you can't take away that he is an intelligent Black man. And I do like the fact that I do feel that when he speaks about things, when it comes to Black men, he tries to hold them accountable. He tries. He's not, he's not a savior. So there's only so much he can do. But at least he's not backing down from speaking what he believes. So I'm going to play this clip real quick of what columbusshort had to say, which was just absolutely ridiculous. And then we'll get into what Dr. Umar Johnson had to say.
These women are Black women, were raised by single mothers, absentee fathers that are either incarcerated, dead, or just gone.
Talk about
that their mama said, you don't need no man. You can do it by yourself. So that energy.
This is giving me chills.
That energy comes into the home. They're not, what you talking about? Unless you giving me this, doing that. There's no respect of the man, the Black man, in that by Black women. And I'm not, Black women, do not be mad at me.
They're gonna be mad. Trust me.
I'm not talking about all of y'all. I'm saying
they're gonna be mad.
There's a majority of you guys that were that was raised without a father.
Now,
so you have no respect for that. So what's the difference?
Okay.
Well,
let me say this really quick, because I know my fan base and I know these people. And they're going to drag
confidence.
All right, so you heard the ridiculousness that was spewed. And what was even more ridiculous was the chick who was interviewing him, this podcast, whatever this podcast is, where she's snapping her fingers and like, oh, yes, I felt that. It's like, girl, what are you talking about? First of all, let me say this. I'm not somebody who's a relationship expert, and I don't talk a whole lot about relationships, but I do have experience in it. And I say that because I've been married for 25 years to my best friend. Okay. And I don't talk a whole lot about my personal relationship, and I never will talk a whole lot about it, but I speak from experience. So I'm not just somebody who's just speaking what I see. I'm speaking what I know. I'm married to a black man, and I'm grateful for the man that I'm with. I don't knock anyone who feels that they have to or want to date outside of their race or try something new, and based on their experiences. It's none of my business. But I understand black women who have odds against black men, because you hear stupid shit like this that comes out of people like Columbus Short's mouth when they're speaking from a place of, non-intelligence, speaking about black women as if they just want to be these masculine creatures. Like, remember when TD Jakes was preaching about that, saying you're too masculine and you're not resting in your femininity? A lot of black women are not allowed to rest in their femininity because they've been forced or pushed to do everything on their own. Do you really think a black woman wants to be a single mother? Now, while I will say that women have to take accountability for, sleeping around, and if they get pregnant by somebody who they're not in a committed relationship with, I'm not saying that marriage is the be all end all, because you could be in a relationship with somebody that's terrible and be married to them. And that's why divorce exists. But I'm saying a lot of these women, they are on guard because they have been hurt and they have been broken. And if the men were supposed to be the leaders and the heads of the households and the providers, and they're not being that, and they haven't been that for a long time, what woman do you know, black, white, indifferent, is going to allow some loser to come into her space that she's already built up to try to control her, run her life, tell her what to do, want her to pretty much be a housewife and a homemaker, but also be a career woman working and paying the bills as well? Hell no. If she cannot be somebody that is not, because I'm not saying that a black woman should be with a man that just has money and he's controlling her, and then like the Kevin Samuels mentality, if a man is doing well and making great money, you can't expect him to be faithful. That's some bullshit right there too. You know what I mean? So it's like, what are you talking about, Columbus Short? You have no idea of what you're speaking about. So what he was saying was just absolutely ridiculous. And I hate when I hear stuff like that, but I don't get on these podcasts. I don't get in these comment sections and debate with anybody, or I don't even act like I know everything just because of my experience, but I do know what I do know because I have experience, and also because of what I see and what I know. And I know that a lot of black men, they do things that other races of men do not do. And I'm going to give you an example. People talk a lot of crap about, like, let's just say the Mexicans, right? And they'll say things like, oh, the Mexicans, they come to this country, they're having all these kids and all this other stuff. But one of the things that I will say that I see, because I see it, and I don't know what goes on behind closed doors, so I'm not saying that these men are perfect either. But the women, they could have had 5, 6 kids. They're not in great shape. But when they're walking around in the stores, they're not single. The man is with them. A lot of times, even if they may not be married, they're in a relationship and they're living together, and the man is working and he's providing, and the woman that he's with that has had these kids with him, they're together. They're together. And I talked about that a little bit with Cardi B when I was talking about if she is pregnant or not. I don't really care. But people would, say things like, why is she pregnant by this man again, knowing how he treats her? She is, and even though people like to say she's black, Afro-Latina, whatever, she is not African-American. And that community, the Hispanic community, they definitely are more so where you will see them. If they have multiple children, they're not having multiple baby daddies. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm not saying it's okay to keep having kids with a loser either, even if you're married to him. But I'm just saying that's something that you don't see a whole lot of. You don't see them having multiple kids with multiple guys. So it, to me, speaks to the men. They stick around. You have these black men on these podcasts talking about women and the black women and how they look, and then they're out of shape and got stretch marks and all that, like stuff that they can't help. Like seriously, looking at these people like Drea on social media, that's just unrealistic. You had a baby on Tuesday and then by Friday you got washboard abs. You don't have one stretch mark on your body and you're walking around in a thong bikini. Like, that's not real. Most women, after they have a baby, they're bleeding for 6 weeks or more. It's like, seriously, it's just ridiculous. It's unrealistic. So they talk about things that are unrealistic when it comes to black women, as if other ethnicities, other cultures, other races of women are different. Yeah, we may have different things culturally, but ultimately, women are women. So to sit and talk about black women on these podcasts, you don't see other races of men doing that to the women in their communities. You do not see it. And if any of them talk about women, they're talking about women, period. They're not talking about, you don't hear them say white women. Yeah, these Jewish women, these Indian women, these Asian women. They don't do that. They don't talk about the women in their own communities. Only black men do that. And the fact that black males do that, and the fact that they don't see that that's a problem is absolutely insane. But I want to play what Dr. Umar Johnson had to say.
Got some heat for saying that black men are dating outside their race because most black women are raised by single mothers and absentee fathers and taught a don't need a man mentality. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, here's what I would say to my brother Columbus Short, and I'm a fan of his. Are we not all victims of the systemic oppression and injustice that racism has introduced into our community? So just as you have black women who didn't grow up with their father, you have black men who didn't grow up with their fathers or their mothers. In other words, why is it acceptable for the black man raised by a black woman without his dad to reject a black woman raised by her mother without her dad? I think
facts, nothing but facts.
Sometimes black men can be guilty of a double standard where we want a perfect offering when we ourselves are not a perfect offering.
Preach. Like, this is so, like, honestly, it's common sense. It doesn't have to come from the mouth of someone who proclaims to be a doctor or a clinical psychologist or whatever, his titles are. I've been saying this for some time. I may not do it on podcasts. I may not do it on my own platform all the time because it's just not a subject that I care to discuss all the time. But it's the truth. How can a black man expect a black woman who did not come from the ideal, best setup and home to be perfect when they didn't come from that either? And they're not perfect.
And to that point, I think black men need to recognize the fact that one of the reasons we have so much conflict with black women is because we don't operate on a masculine platform.
I want to ask you something.
And I operate on a female platform. For example, when a woman gets angry, rather than you trying to understand your queen non-emotionally. So you can't have both people in a relationship with a low emotional IQ. Because if both people in a home, if you and your wife both have a low emotional IQ, if you and your wife both have a low emotional IQ, y'all going to argue over everything because nobody says, I am not going to emote over this. I'm not going to.
Facts. You just can't do it. You can't do it. The Bible says a house divided against itself cannot stand. Period.
Deal with this with feelings. I'm going to use reason and intelligence. That's what the man is supposed to do. Yeah. But guess what we do? Raised by single mothers, many of us, we reflect right back to them that emotional trauma that they throwing on us.
And let me tell you something. It's true. And there's a scripture in the Bible where it irks me sometimes. It's in the book of Proverbs, and it says that it's better to be on the rooftop than in the house with a nagging woman or a nagging wife. That goes for men too. A woman who's non-emotional, and we tend to be more emotional, but it doesn't mean that we all act on our emotions and our feelings. Somebody could piss us off, but if you have emotional intelligence, you can walk away from it and you're not going to respond. A lot of these men are P-U-S-S-Y. I'm just going to say it. I'll spell it out. And they will go off and they'll whine and nag. And And that's what a lot of them are doing now on these podcasts. So it's not about these women. A lot of these men have taken on wearing the panties, if you will. And so what Dr. Umar Johnson is saying right now is straight facts.
So in essence, you have two females arguing, although one is in a man's body. Black men have to start being masculine and less feminine. All this cattiness, this back and forth between black men and black women on the internet, that is feminine and feminine. Masculinity don't operate like that. Masculinity wants to understand how woman is coming from. Masculinity wants to then intervene, study himself, evaluate his behavior, and try to level up to where she needs him to be. But arguing back and forth with women as a man, that's anti-masculine behavior. What we really need is some testosterone shots. We need more testosterone because black men are mimicking female behavior emotionally, and they're not even recognizing it.
So listen, I'm not even going to add too much more to that because he spoke nothing but facts there. And while I said Dr. Umar Johnson, he is an intelligent person, and I don't agree with everything that he says because I don't like that narrative that he pushes, that a lot of people try to harp on, that the reasons a lot of the black men left years ago was because of the government and how they pushed welfare and food stamps and housing. But you could not be married. You could not have the man in the home. Any real man was not going to leave their home with their family. And no black woman pushed a black man out to say, I don't want you to take care of me and our family. I want the government to give me a check, to give me some housing so I can live in these projects, get some food stamps, and we don't need you no more. That's bull crap. It's not true. So, like I said, I don't agree with everything that he says. I don't agree with that. No real black man was going to leave his home so that his wife or his girlfriend, baby mama, whatever, could get government subsidies. And the woman said, I don't want this man. I want the least. All right. So anyway, let me know what you think about what Columbus Short had to say and Dr. Umar Johnson's response to it. I'm glad he spoke up because when I heard what he said, I was going to talk about it, but I just said, you know what? I'm not touching that right now. I got too much stuff going on and I just don't even have the energy to evoke into that. And it was just draining. So yeah, thanks, Dr. Umar, for speaking on that because it needed to be said. It really did. And and he said what he said, and then he came out and like issued an apology, which was bullcrap because of the backlash that he received. You know what I mean? But he meant what he said, and he said what he meant, even though what he said was some bull bleep. So just stand in it. So let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for being here, liking, and subscribing. I'm Beth, just being beautifully honest. So until next time, wanted to keep it brief, beautiful, and now I'm going to say bye. Don't wanna talk, don't wanna see, don't wanna feel.